Duchess. I'm president of the Local Government Association, and when in London, I stay in a block of flats. I have a number of amendments in this group. Amendment 9 is the most substantive, but my name is also attached to 4A, 7A, 7B, and 147A. I was trying not to test the patience of the committee by adding "and disabled people" into every single part of the bill that I could have. But what I am looking for is more specific recognition that disabled people need greater support and protection than they currently have. Because I believe if it's not specifically mentioned, disabled people will be forgotten, however good the intention might be right now. There are several important parts where explicitly mentioning disabled people would add significant value, such as on residence panels. And of course, there are many types of impairments. We're not one homogenous group, but bringing additional or different knowledge would be useful for a far greater number of people. Listening to the noble lady, Baroness Brinton, and her experience is what disabled people think about every single day. Every building I go into, I automatically start thinking about how I would get out if there was a fire. And the noble lady and I could probably spend most of the afternoon listing all the incidents where we've been left near staircases or on staircases. But my lords, I take my personal responsibility very seriously. I can still get down a flight of stairs in my wheelchair as long as I have a handrail to hold on to. I can do it reasonably quickly. When I was an athlete, I could do it incredibly easily. But as I get older, I know that's going to get harder, and my ability to get out will be more challenging. One time I was in an office block, the fire alarm went off, it wasn't a drill, and there was one evacuation chair, absolutely fantastic. There were 2 wheelchair users on that floor. So we looked at each other and worked out who needed the evac chair the most. So I went down 5 flights of stairs in my chair. Since second reading, more disabled people have been in touch to explain their fears, but also letting me know about some solutions they've been given, which, quite frankly, are ludicrous, and that is why we need to have different things included in this bill. What we often see in situations like this is that the solutions that non-disabled people come up with are very much a medical model rather than a social model of disability, and do not take into account a disabled person's reality or their life. It was once suggested to me, not in relation to this bill, but it'd be far easier if disabled people had a curfew so that they went home at night and we knew where they were. I mean, it's absolutely... This was a really serious suggestion, which I'm afraid I struggled not to laugh at. And if anything vaguely approaches this in Grand Committee, you would understand if I push back quite strongly on it. Tagging disabled people is not a sensible solution to this either, because this is absolving ourselves from responsibility of changing how we think about disabled people. We need to be more forward-thinking and, in essence, future-proof decisions that we take. Specifically to Amendment 9, in another place, the Right Honourable Mr Christopher Pincher said the Secretary of State can already consider the vulnerability of residents when making regulations. But, my lords, I don't think that this goes far enough. And I know there's likely to be suggestions about including information in a premises information box. I mean, that's very interesting, but again, I don't think it goes far enough, because we do need to consider the needs of disabled people. And I very much welcome a discussion with the Noble Lord the Minister and the Bill team to think about how we can find the right wording, not by just sticking any of the disabled people at every point in the bill, but genuinely helping disabled people to make it better. In our second reading debate, I asked the Noble Lord the Minister when the Personal Emergency Evacuation Plan consultation will be published. On the 3rd of February, I asked a question for a written answer about this, and the Noble Lady Baroness Williams answered on the 17th of February, and I quote, "Once the views of all the individuals and organisations have contributed have been carefully considered, but in terms of time frame, the Noble Lady stated that that would be shortly." Now, I know, my lords, that shortly in parliamentary terms can be quite a wide time frame, so I wondered if the Noble Lord the Minister would be able to provide any update on what shortly means in this context, because this piece of work would be incredibly useful in terms of helping us navigate this bill. My lords, I'm expecting some sympathy from the Noble Lord the Minister, possibly not much movement, and obviously I'll be taking away his comments from this debate. But I will be returning at report stage with amendments in this area, and I will divide the House in terms of ensuring we have protection for disabled people. My Lords, very briefly, I just also wanted to speak to Lord Blencathra's amendments. He apologises. He is not here today. He is trying to get down to London. When he spoke to me this morning, he was somewhere around Penrith and was stuck there. He's hoping to be here very, very shortly. But he messaged me and he said that with his amendment, he wanted to add buildings below 18 metres that pose a special risk. Not to tie the Secretary of State's hands, but to give the option of complete flexibility to define buildings and alter any of the definitions in the section. We have no idea, and he expressed it very passionately at second reading, we have no idea what will be found when proper inspections take place. But there are flats that have been converted from office blocks, there are box flats with no windows, and most of his amendments proposed are in the forms of, and I quote, regulations may. He made it very clear that when he was chair of the Delegated Powers Committee, he would have deplored a formulation of words in that way, but inevitably recognises a number of provisions in this bill have to be skeletal. He goes on to say that taking the power doesn't mean it has to be used, and certainly doesn't imply a commitment to undertake fire remedial work on all buildings, even those under 11 metres, which may still be 4 stories high.